Chicago, 2011. A cop is murdered. Police and prosecutors swear they have the trigger man. He swears he didn't do it. How far will each side go to prove they're right?
Like it's just one bombshell after another, where you're like, what?
The story of a PlayStation, a brain-eating amoeba, and the relentless pursuit of justice. Off Duty, out now. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Hi, this is Hannah Berner from Giggly Squad. Have you ever put on a bra that makes you feel like a goddess? Prepare to be obsessed with the Dream Angels Wicked Bra from Victoria's Secret, the iconic brand behind the world's most comfortable bras. And I only wear the most comfortable bras. The bestseller features an innovative sling for perfect lift without padding, and the fit is chef's kiss. Awaken your inner goddess with new colors and super femme lace embroidery. Find out why this bra has thousands of 5-star reviews and counting. Shop it in stores and online at victoriasecret.com.
Howdy, howdy, ho, and welcome to Fantasy Fan Fellas. I'm Hayden, producer of the Fantasy Fangirls podcast and your resident lover of all things Sanderson.
And I'm Steven, your bookish internet goofball, but you can call me the Smash Daddy.
And we are currently deep diving Brandon Sanderson's fantasy epic, Mistborn. But here's the catch. Steven here has not read Mistborn before.
That's right, hey. So each week, you'll get my unfiltered, raw reactions to every single chapter.
And along the way, we'll do character deep dives, magic explainers, and Steven will even try to guess what's next. Spoiler alert, he'll be wrong.
Newsflash, I'm never wrong. Episodes come out every Wednesday, and you can find Fantasy Fan Fellas wherever you get your podcasts.
Hello and welcome back to the Psychological Pop Podcast. This is a podcast where we talk about popular culture through the lens of an attorney and a therapist. I'm the therapist, Tess Brigham.
And I'm Brooke Brigham. I'm the attorney.
And today we are covering the Netflix documentary, Jerry Springer Fights, Camera, Action. I originally thought it was Lights, Camera, Fight. I was like, oh no, I'm wrong. Okay, fights.
Well,
camera,
fights being the
main
theme here.
So, what were you? This is a 2-part documentary. So, what were your thoughts, like high-level thoughts about the documentary?
Well, it brought back a lot of memories. I did watch the Jerry Springer show. Not a lot, but there was a few years in there, I think, when it first started, because just the shock value of it. Mm-hmm. And it was also kind of depressing.
Yeah.
It was kind of like, oh my God, we used to watch this and this was entertainment. And it's like, people's pain and crisis and, which, all of the talk shows of the time, Jenny Jones, Ricky Lake, all these people, it's people who are in crisis of some sort. And then, towards the end of it, they draw the parallels to stuff that we see today, like the Housewives and Trump on The Apprentice. And although Jerry Springer, I think, is still worse than those shows, it was what allowed kind of open the door for other people to be more outrageous. Maybe not this outrageous, but just kind of across the board, television started to become more outrageous.
And the things that people say could be more outrageous and less shocking.
Yeah.
I never really watched the show, mainly not because I think I'm so highbrow by any means, but I really just don't enjoy watching people fight, even though I know I watch The Housewives, but I don't necessarily watch The Housewives because I want to watch them fight. I watch because I am fascinated by people and people's stories and why people do the things that they do. I'm fascinated by human nature. So I think I felt like with Jerry Springer that it didn't feel genuine. It didn't feel like true. It didn't feel like real, true human behavior. And while, yes, everything was true, that was a big argument in the documentary was like, no, we're not faking these things. But learning how much they were hyped up to get to that point, there was a little bit of like, well, yeah, it is real, but but you're manipulating people to get to that that place. And
the Housewives, I think, does the same thing.
Yeah. I mean, I guess they do. Maybe I shouldn't. I just don't like watching physical fights with people. I just don't like watching people yell at each other and just saying like, you're this, you're that. But, you know, it's like, I don't need to see Klansmen. Like, I know what you have to say. So,
yeah. Well, the physical fighting, you know, it didn't start out that way. You know, it just kind of like built up and built up. And I remember like the physical fighting, it got to a point where you could count how many, it would be like 5 seconds between the time when, you know, they reveal the, whatever the confrontation is, you know, cheating on you or whatever. You could count, you know, 3, 2, 1, you know, 3 to 5 seconds, someone's attacking someone, then everyone starts attacking and starts fighting. And they had security, but the security would wait. You know, they wouldn't just run up on the stage and break up the fight. They'd wait about a good 10 seconds, let people get some good punches in, and then they'd get up there and then they'd try to break it up. But they really weren't trying because the people would get loose and keep fighting. You know, it was like these were the worst security bouncers would have ever, you know, so they're pretending like they care about breaking this stuff up, but they really don't. I mean, yeah, it was, I don't think it was not real to a certain extent. You know, there was a lot of manipulation and a lot of whipping people up. And I thought it was fascinating that they said that something like 90% of the guests or 75% of the guests came from this area. They called it the Springer Triangle from Tennessee to Ohio to Georgia. 75% of the guests came from there.
Yeah.
And these are people who are from small town, never been out of their small town. And, you know, they'd fly them to Chicago. They'd give them a limo and drinks and hotel. And I think that was a big incentive a lot of times.
Yeah.
For people to go on the show. And, you know, because we always ask, or I always ask myself, like, who would agree to do this? You know, who would agree to go on a show like this? But obviously the producers are telling them things to get them there.
Yeah.
Oh, it's going to be great. It's not going to be that bad. Then they get there and then they gin them up, you know. And then it is really bad. The whole thing's nuts.
Yeah. I mean, I think that, right, we heard from one of the producers of the show, Melinda, that every episode was like, okay, I can't wait for Jerry to, you know, I'm really excited. I hope Jerry can really help us get through something or get through that. And I think that, you know, what's interesting about the show is there's definitely like these phases or periods of time. There was like the initial phase where you know, the show was kind of milquetoast and blah. And, you know, it was terrible ratings. And then they hire this guy, what's his name? Richard Dominic. He becomes the EP, and he was you know, he wrote about the tabloid headlines. And I didn't realize this guy was on David Letterman so much, but they hired him and he took the show and he started to push the envelope. And so there was that period of time. And then they had the KKK on, and then that created a fight. And then there was this fight phase, you know, until about, it sounds like around 2000, 2001. And then it sounds like from 2001 to like 2000 and whenever it ended. When did it end? 2018. I think it then became like a different show. I think the show went through its phases, but it's very famous for the fights. It's very famous for that Jerry.
Yeah. They had to tone it down because bad things were happening, lawsuits and stuff. So yeah, they had to water it down. And also, you know, what made it unique too was Jerry Springer. I mean, here's this guy. I mean, what a juxtaposition. You have this guy who's he was a lawyer. He was a news caster.
He was the mayor of Cincinnati.
Wow. You know, he just seems like this, you know, regular guy. And here he is in the middle. And it always, he didn't really say a lot during the show. He'd kind of just let the guests go off. But, you know, he would very calmly, you know, like say things to them and try to mediate things. You know what I mean? You know, he wasn't the one who was getting them worked up. He was the one who was trying to be calm. And then at the very end of every show, he would do this thing. I think it was called Final Thought.
Mm-hmm.
And he would kind of lecture everybody for a minute and a half about values and about, it was almost like he was saying, don't be like these people.
Yeah.
And it was so ironic to me. And then he would always end it with, till next time, take care of yourselves and each other. And it's like, what? We just watched people just be so horrible to each other and physically fighting with each other. And then he would try to wrap it all up in a nice little bow.
Yeah, I think that's I had a lot of feelings about Jerry Springer, and I guess I knew he had passed away. I didn't realize it was 2003 of how recent it was. Do you remember what did he die of?
He had pancreatic cancer.
Oh, okay. Because I was going to say he's relatively young-ish.
He was 79.
Yeah, I mean, so it had to have been some kind of disease or something like that. But I went through a lot of feelings with him. I really did, because it seemed like he also took a different stance on the show as he was going along. And, at the height of the show, when they were doing so well, he definitely took the stance of, hey, these people are coming on. We're not, this is life. This is entertainment. This is what this is. This is an alternative. And then it seemed like towards the end of his life, he's making these comments like, I guess you'll see me in hell. I'm a terrible person.
Yeah, he felt bad about it.
He felt bad.
Yeah.
And that's the part of it that I kept kind of trying to wrap my brain around, like, well, and here's the thing is Jerry Springer and the Jerry Springer Show directly responsible for these things that happened, the murder of Nan, and we'll get to that later. Are they absolutely responsible for all of these things that happen? No. But when he talks about like being good to each other, I'm sorry, but we all do have a certain level of responsibility. And I'm sorry, but Jerry Springer was a stepping stone. It was a stepping stone to get to where that person got to.
Right. And they did trick people.
And they did.
That woman, Nan, thought she was coming on the show to reunite with her ex-boyfriend or ex-husband. I can't remember if they were married.
Her ex-husband.
And it was a trick. They brought this other woman on. And I mean, they did lie to people and trick people. And there's a very famous case on the Jenny Jones show where the show was something like, someone has a crush on you. And so they contact this person and they say, oh, someone has a crush on you. Do you want to come on the show? And they'll reveal themselves. And the show claimed that they would tell people it could be a man or a woman. That's what they claimed. So anyway, this man comes on the show and, someone's got a crush on him and he's waiting to find out who it is. And it's another man who comes out. It's someone he knows somehow. But he's not gay. He's not interested in having a relationship with this man. Anyway, long story short, after the show is over, the guy who came on to find out who his crush was killed the guy.
Yeah.
And, that's horrible. I mean, just... It's really messing. Not that that's an excuse to kill someone, but clearly, I mean, he felt humiliated on national television. He felt tricked. He and he took that rage and he did the wrong thing, obviously, but it happened. And,
Well, I think the other piece of this is that I will say our culture and our society is different than it once was, but obviously with this Nan case with her ex-husband Ralph, like they obviously never asked her, like, do you guys have any DV in your background? Has anything ever happened? I mean, that's the thing is that now that we're able to see the full picture of this relationship, you can take a step back and do that. But what we hear about the show is they were producing 200 shows a year. And there wasn't time or energy
to
or
investigate,
focus to truly focus. And even if maybe you heard about that, these people are not, the producers, that's what they are. And they're not trained professionals to be able to go, ooh, DV. Oh,
yeah,
that's not the right place, because taking a step back, they the situation. Ralph was a dangerous person. You know what I mean?
Well, maybe we should just tell the story.
Okay. All right. Sorry. We're okay. So basically around the year is 2000. Let me go to my notes here. So the year is 2000 and there's this woman, her name's Nancy. She goes by Nan. And we meet her son, Jeffrey, who tells his mom's story, which is Nancy was a widow. She raised 2 boys on her own, never really dated. And it sounds like her boys grew up and were older. And someone introduces her to like the AOL chat room. She meets this guy, Ralph, who is in Germany. It's a little unclear if she married him and to come over or if he got here and then they got married.
It's probably a 90-day fiance visa type situation. I think they got married. He came over here and then they got married.
So, and obviously she's the one with the home and everything. So he came in and was living with her and they get married. And apparently a year into the relationship, he hits her. There's this incident where he smacks her so hard, she knocks her down and she's like, no, absolutely not. No. So they get divorced. She separates herself from him, but you know, the son didn't quite know what was going on. My guess is that obviously there was, you know, it wasn't so much like I think she was lonely. I think they obviously had this dysfunctional relationship. And so I think it sounds like Nan wanted to get back together with Ralph. And so the producers go to her and tell her, yeah, you know, you want to get back with Ralph. We're going to bring Ralph on the show. And so this way.
How did she get on the show? Did she contact the show?
They don't say.
She must have contacted the show.
Well, Jeffrey does not say.
Or maybe Ralph and this other lady.
Eleanor.
Yeah, we were never told, like, how did she get on the show? Because she's not the type, you look at her, she's not the type to be like, I'm going to, you know, work this out on the Jerry Springer show. You know?
They never told her that the topic or the title of the episode was Secret Mistresses Confronted. And so she thought that she was going to have this opportunity to reunite with Ralph and basically tell him and, you know, get back together. But what she learns is that Ralph had married this other woman, Eleanor, and then Eleanor was already on the show. And, I mean, but then it was revealed that apparently Ralph was having sex with Nan, like the night before, or the last couple of days. I mean, obviously Ralph was working both these women. It was a mess. But you can see very clearly if you as you watch the footage that Nan was like a deer in headlights. She had this was not, you could tell she was so uncomfortable. So like, what is going on here? This isn't at all what I thought it would be. She refused to get physical and she left the stage. She left the show. And they threatened her. This is one of their threats they would do, which is if you don't get back out there and finish the show, we won't fly you back down to wherever you're from. Mm-hmm. And so Nan was like, no, we'll forget it. Apparently everybody else, like she was one of the few people that really stood her ground. And apparently she like walked, found her way to the bus station. A Good Samaritan found her and like
she
paid
had
for
money.
No nothing. And paid for her to get back to Florida. And I guess apparently like, you know, she kind of tried to move on with her life. And then apparently 3 months after the taping, she got back together with Ralph and they were going to put money down on a house. And Ralph apparently went back to his old ways. There was a domestic violence incident again. She wasn't going to take it anymore. So she hires an attorney and we meet her.
This is all before the show airs.
Yes. She hires an attorney, Lisa Feinberg. And basically, because Ralph had kicked her out of her home and it was her home, or apparently she was the one that paid for everything. So on July 24th, 2000, there was a court date and the judge granted her sole ownership of the home and a restraining order against him. And apparently he didn't really react. You know, he was very calm, apparently, about everything, which is always scary. And so then he left calmly and then he went to a bar. And the bar was playing Jerry Springer. And basically he sat there and watched their episode of the show getting drunk. And they believe this is what triggered Ralph to go over to Nan's house. And basically he choked her and stomped on her head. Apparently it was a horrible scene.
He beat her to death.
He beat her to death. And so then Ralph and Eleanor, they go on the run. Mm-hmm. And, you know, so this is the first time that there was a real significant incident that happened in connection to the show. And I was also kind of surprised how callous everybody was. I was surprised how Jerry Springer was really callous. Like, I have a lot of feelings. Like I said, I don't know how to think about Jerry Springer at this point in all of this, because there definitely feels a little bit like he was talking out of both sides of his mouth. Like that, I don't know if he believed everything he was saying. And they got him the day of this. They kind of found him like wandering around or outside his home. And he was so cold and callous about that this happened.
Yeah, the show was completely blasé about it, but they got wind that, I don't know, they were going to be subpoenaed to I don't know, deposition, or subpoenaed to what, I'm not really sure, to the trial, I don't know. But anyway, to escape having to be part of this legal process of, prosecuting Ralph, they took everyone on the show to Jamaica.
Yeah, for hedonism.
At the hedonism resort. And there's Jerry in this hot tub with 6 women in bikinis. And it's like, oh my God, what has happened to this guy? Yeah. This mild-mannered, former mayor, lawyer, newscaster who, seemed like a nice guy. Like, he didn't have a problem being part of any of this. And mind you, he's making a lot of money. He's signing like $30 million contracts. I mean, he did this for 27 years.
Yeah.
It made him rich.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It wasn't until the very end that he started to have some kind of remorse about it.
And that's my issue. Like, this was a moment where you could have really shifted things and changed things and did things differently and pivoted. I mean, and that's the thing, is we hear from Nancy's, one of her sons, who is very clearly, he talks about how much this has impacted him. He's like, I thought I would have a bustling career. Obviously this has been incredibly difficult to deal with. And I think that for him, I mean, he says this, nobody from the Springer Show ever showed any thought, any remorse, anything. And I understand legally lawyers are probably in their ears going, don't culpability, don't say these certain things, which I get that. But what was interesting was we see scenes from the court case, because eventually Eleanor and Ralph are caught and Eleanor becomes a witness, and the show is brought up a ton as part of his defense, as part of the show, like as part of the narrative of what happened. And so there is this piece of, no, it is this taping of the show doing this did impact this did impact what was happening here. It's not that the show didn't directly make Ralph do any of these things, but you are part of it.
Yeah, it basically takes a bad situation and makes it worse every time. No one is ever better for being on this show.
Yeah.
And this is an extreme example, but I can guarantee you that 10 out of 10 people who go on the Jerry Springer Show, the aftermath of it is not good. Again, it makes a bad situation worse. Just adds more fuel to the fire. Whatever problems these people are having, well, now you've made it worse. I mean, there's no redeeming quality to this show, it's purely just, I don't know. I always thought of it just like a train wreck. And they say something about, like, if you're their goal was, if you're flipping through the channels, you're going to stop on this show because something's going to be happening. It's going to come on, it's going to catch your attention because people are fighting or yelling or they're doing something weird. And it's like that prurient interest, it just catches you. It's like people's worst instincts to stop and go, what is this? You just can't believe it.
Because I think that we hear a lot from this, I didn't write down his name, from this media critic in Chicago, who obviously has a lot of disdain for Jerry Springer in the show. And he's talking, he talks about this idea of, this kind of entertainment. But there's this other part of me that feels like all of us want to see things that are really weird and gross and different. Like, this is why pimple popping videos are popular. I hate to say this. This is why there's a show, Dr. Pimple Popper. Like, this is why people want to see weird surgeries and gross stuff come out of people. It's like, yeah, we are fascinated by these things. We do want to see these things. And so it kind of bugs me when someone sort of puts themselves on this higher station, like as if you're such a, oh, well, I'm this kind of person. It's like, no, it's human nature to want to see those things. The problem is that people, all of us have a different relationship with those things, and we are all different. And you can see very clearly that for the majority of people, they can watch a certain video or watch an episode of TV and just go on to their lives, but other people can't.
Yeah.
And when you have mental illness, or this guy, Ralph, is a very dangerous person. He was dangerous before, and she was caught in this domestic violence situation. It's really awful. And all of it, what's so amazing about this, the Ralph and Nancy story, is just how quickly all of it escalated. It all really like this 3 months in, and, it's already happening.
Well, because he's a dangerous person.
He's very dangerous.
And this really is starting to make me think about, if you're not screening people, and they weren't screening people.
They couldn't. They had to produce so many shows
very well.
And we heard this from the producers. This is another thing that bugged me, is this show had all of the elements that make these kinds of things happen. You've got someone at the helm that doesn't seem to have any kind of moral compass.
Oh, he doesn't give a shit.
No, he doesn't give a shit. He told us he'd put an execution on TV. He has no problem.
Yeah.
He is driving things like, a dictator, and he's got all these people below him that are willing to do whatever they need to do to make him happy. And they are slowly compromising their own, beliefs, their own stuff, their own moral compass, to the point where almost like a cult. They weren't eating, they weren't sleeping, either abusing drugs and alcohol, right? There's a little bit of like, how did you all get here? But that's the part of it.
Why was that job so great and fantastic?
I know. I didn't understand that either.
They're willing to do that, But in this day and age, it would be responsible even to go on The Bachelor. You have to have a psych eval, now,
yeah. And that's the big difference. That is the big difference between then and now. Is there is more, there are a lot more of these things, but that's the problem, because it's not reality. We're calling it reality. It's not reality, because anytime you have a producer coming in, technically it's not reality because you have a TV camera there. That's always going to change things. That's not quote unquote reality. So anywho, sorry, I interrupted you, but this is what pissed me off. Like it was like this perfect formula for all of this to happen.
Yeah. I'm surprised it didn't happen sooner or more often.
Yeah. Oh, I thought what was interesting to me was the fact that whole Jerry, I always assumed that was this organic thing that happened over the years of the popularity, but it was this producer, Richard Dominic, who said, have them shout Jerry, because Jerry wasn't known. And so he wanted people to feel like he was famous and well known. I was like, oh, that's really interesting. I mean, you have to give this Richard Dominic some credit for the fact that the guy is a showman.
He's an evil genius.
Yeah, he is an evil genius. That's a good way of saying it. That is it. So
yeah, and all these people, like even the producer. Well, so yeah, Richard came from the tabloid world, and I think he hired these producers who all
Melinda did, yeah,
from the tabloid world. So they didn't really have, in hindsight maybe, but I think at the time they didn't. Obviously, they kept working there. They kept doing it. I don't think they had a lot of problems.
Yeah. I think that's another thing too, of how would you stay? I mean, I guess in my mind, if I had to work like that, I think I would have burned out in a couple years. Like, how did these people do this for 10 years? You know what I mean? As long as they did, it's crazy.
Yeah. Well, and going back to how do you get these people on the show? I remember they advertised, at some point during the show, in between commercials or something, they would come on and say, do you have an ex you want to confront? Or do you have a this? Or do you have that? Call this number. So they would advertise for these specific issues, and they would couch it in the terms of, come on the show. This will be your chance to tell your story. Maybe you'll be able to get this person back, you know?
Mhm.
Again, like preying on people's problems and their insecurities and everything. And just so manipulative.
Yeah. Well, so one of the things that Richard, the producer, was saying was that he knew that the show had to keep changing. They kept having to kind of push it. And I think maybe changing, but also upping the ante. He said it couldn't be sexy because I think they started off doing a lot of sexy stories of naked women and that kind of thing. So that's what spurred them to bring on these KKK members. So they brought on like 4 or 5.
This is the beginning of the fighting era.
Yes.
The first era was like, it was like girls kissing and women taking off their tops and, like stuff like that. And then it transitioned into basically fighting and violence.
Because these shows were always about conflict. How did they say it? Conflict within the family. And now we've moved the conflict away from within the family and we've made it like this larger conflict between the guests and the audience. And, on these, not these family issues, but these big giant issues. And so, I didn't know Jerry was the son of Holocaust survivors, but they brought someone out who was, I guess, a controversial figure from the Jewish Defense League. And it started a fight on TV for the first time between the KKK, between the Ku Klux Klan people, the people from this Jewish Defense League, and then audience members. Too. Because I can imagine if I was in the audience, and what are we doing here? And so it was, and that's sort of where it all began. And then people were protesting the show. And that's what helped it too, it was all of a sudden, it was all this attention was put on the show and they were comparing it to wrestling in many ways, violent trash talk show. Yeah.
And at the same time, and this was happening like on the Geraldo show, Geraldo Rivera had a talk show and he famously, I think it was also Ku Klux Klan themed. Remember when someone hit him with a chair and broke his nose? There was a huge fight. And then who was that guy? I think his name was Morton Downey Jr. Yeah, he was very similar to Geraldo. They
all were kind of on the edges. Jenny Jones, Ricky Lake. I mean, Ricky Lake never went that far, but there was definitely...
It was enough.
It was enough. And also, don't forget Oprah. Oprah also, there was never ever fighting per se, but she did do a lot of these same topics. She just did it in a different way.
In a more tasteful way. Yeah. She didn't become, Oprah didn't fully become Oprah for, the Oprah we know now has evolved. But in the beginning, she got into some of this weird stuff,
Yeah, she did. And it wasn't until she had enough power and fame that she then turned and said, well, I'm not really going to do this anymore. And that's the thing is that, Oprah, she had already been kind of half doing the trashy stuff, half doing the you know what I mean? And she was able to make that transition. So it didn't make me wonder, like, could Jerry Springer have done that? Because it could have been the end of Oprah's career. Her saying like, no, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm going to start doing this. Like it could have been. So should Jerry, but Oprah felt like she had some kind of obligation or she felt like she didn't want to do this or she didn't feel like it was right. So she decided not to.
Psych Legal Pop will be right back after these messages.
This message comes from Jackson. Taxes aren't something you can only think about once a year. With investments, planning for tax day is year-round. Fortunately, Jackson offers tax-efficient products. Visit Jackson.com for more information on how our products can make your tax bill a little bit less painful. Jackson is short for Jackson Financial Incorporated, Jackson National Life Insurance Company, Lansing, Michigan, and Jackson National Life Insurance Company of New York, Purchase, New York.
Chicago, 2011. A cop is murdered. Police and prosecutors swear they have the trigger man. He swears he didn't do it. How far will each side go to prove they're right?
Like it's just one bombshell after another, where you're like, what?
The story of a PlayStation, a brain-eating amoeba, and the relentless pursuit of justice. Off Duty, out now. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
So I guess that's what I wonder about too. Like how much is enough for you, Jerry? Because there is a point at which, like, this isn't about free speech anymore. This isn't about anything. You know what I mean? There's a point at which, like, you yourself can decide, I don't want this to be my legacy, or I don't want this to be tied to me, or it has gone too far, or what I've been fighting for before, it's not the same thing. Yeah. And I feel like that's what it was. What he was fighting for in the beginning, by the time we got to the mid 2000s, it was a little bit like, I don't think you can fight for this anymore.
After the murder and the lawsuits, they were forced to tone it down. And it got kind of boring, and then it eventually ended, I think, because, it wasn't the same old Jerry Springer anymore. I don't know. He clearly kind of sold his soul to the devil for money here.
Yeah.
I never understood him.
Okay. So I have a thought about this. So I want to talk about, we learn about how the producers sort of worked the guests, right? We find out that they treat them really well. They're best friends. I'm sure that, you might be someone who doesn't get listened to a lot, and here's someone listening to your story. Someone wants to hear what you have to say. Isn't that great? And, they tell us about how they fly him in, and there's a limo, and, drinks and hotels and all of this stuff, treating them like, and then they go to the stage and they have to get Springered, where they're coached on, and we see this happening. We see people coaching them and working with them like an acting coach on, what would you say? Okay, no, say
it like there. This. Get in their face.
You're mad, right? Yeah. You're really, really mad. So coaching people. Now, I watch an enormous, probably too much. I watch a lot of like oddballs. I hate to admit this, but I like to watch mystery shows. But I also really enjoy like shows like FBI and Chicago Cops. I'm sorry, it's bizarre, I know, but I watch a lot of these hour-long Dick Wolf shows that are about police procedures. And there's a storyline that comes up all the time where they'll get somebody who's a low-level drug addict or drug dealer, and they caught him with drugs, and then we're like, okay, we need to flip this person, and we're going to flip them, and we're going to use this little drug dealer to get this bigger dealer, or to the head of this cartel, right? And it seems a little bit like, don't police do this to people too? They lie to them. They tell them things that aren't really true and manipulate them. They put them in a situation where they can't get out, much like, oh no, you won't be able to get back home, so get back on the stage. I mean, but I don't know if this is just drama for TV or if that really happens. So I'm curious if like, how common is it right? Because aren't they always getting, I know it's very common for law enforcement to lie to suspects, but isn't another part of it too, where you kind of, you get somebody who's in a weakened state, and you kind of take those vulnerabilities and you use it to your own advantage, and with little or no regard to how that drug addict or low level dealer is going to be able to survive, or how their life's going to be. That they do all of this in the name of, well, we're going after the bad guys. It just feels like it's the same thing. And again, this is a TV show, and it's a little different when you're trying to like bring down a cartel. I get it. But at the same time, there's a part of me that feels like there's all these people that are criticizing Jerry Springer and then criticizing the way in which all of this is produced. But it's like, but we allow it in a lot of other venues and ways in this world. Is that not right?
Yeah. I mean, that's how you get false confessions, and that's how you get people to, how you flip people. I mean, it's a psychological technique. It's used in a lot of different situations.
So, yeah,
I don't know.
I don't know. It bugs me when people get on these high horses about oh, that's so disgusting. No, that's so terrible. It's like, but we're okay with these kinds of tactics.
Well, we're not okay. No, we're not okay with it. I think most people are not okay with the way police question people and the things that they do where they feel the ends justify the means.
Yes.
I've heard cops say that before. I've heard cops say, yeah, I planted drugs on this guy because I need to get him. He breaks into 10 houses a day in this neighborhood and he just needs to get off the streets. And, you know, they do that all the time and they don't have a problem with it.
Yeah.
And, you know, if you're questioning someone, lying to someone, you think that they did it and you want to, you know, solve some crime. A lot of it is just solving it. They just want to solve something, quote unquote, solve it and move on. Or, you know, they're trying to get justice for some victim or whatever. They rationalize it. And I think that the same with these producers, they probably rationalize what they're doing, thinking, well, you know, this person needs to tell their story and need to be heard. And, you know, maybe doing this will help this relationship. Again, it never does. And so they want to make it as good as possible. And also they need it for the show. It needs to be entertaining. It needs to be dramatic, whatever. But I think in the back of their mind, they're thinking, well, yeah, we're producing this so it's more interesting, but, you know, maybe the ends justify the means. Maybe this will help this person realize their boyfriend's a douchebag and they'll break up with him, or, you know, and I'm sure that, those producers, they must have to go through so much mental gymnastics to justify their jobs. I mean, it sounds horrible to me. And that one guy, Toby, he just, you know, was using drugs and alcohol to numb it. And he clearly never liked it and always had a problem with it. But I was just like, well, why did you stay? Like, can't you go work somewhere else?
But that was so weird because we learned that his father was a production designer and I think still is maybe
on Star Trek.
No, on SNL.
Oh, SNL.
He's been on SNL. So since the very beginning. So his father was like, no, I work on real TV. What you work on is trash. And Toby got so upset with that. I guess he didn't talk to his dad for 4 years.
Well, all the more reason to leave. But I don't know.
Yeah. I was like, can't your dad get you a different job? I mean, God, use some nepotism here.
Yeah.
But the other thing too was it was almost kind of like Toby then transferred that father figure onto this guy, Richard Dominic, the EP, the executive producer. He basically was like, this is my daddy now, you know, and I'm going to follow him. But yeah, that was the other part. Like Melinda talking about how she got fired because she got some people on that actually were faking it. And that's what got her fired. I'm like, and she was talking about how she was under so much pressure and, you know, you just needed to get it done and blah, blah, blah. And you're like, yeah, then leave. What? I mean, being a producer on the Jerry Springer Show, you cannot be making that much money.
Maybe we were. That's the only reason why it sounded like a horrible job.
Yeah. So it has to be the money. But then I'm thinking about this and I'm thinking, okay, so what I do this job, and I think the only way to make this work is because you have no life, is to like not have an apartment, not have anything. And you just for 10 years, you just save everything. You eat at the show, you live at the show, you do this for 10 years, and then you have a stack of money and you can get out. But it's all going to go to therapy. Because the psychological damage. And I guess I feel like Toby obviously is very remorseful. I don't feel like the other producers so much. It almost felt like they felt like the kid that had been picked on because it was such, you're trash, you're trash, you're trash. And then we learn at one point, did they tell us what year? Springer beats Oprah. Like one day, you know, so they talked about the ratings and apparently on these talk shows, you want to get like a 2. A 2 meant 2 million people. And that's what they were always aiming for. And apparently Oprah was always getting a 12 or a 14. No one could get close to that. And no one was even trying. People just want to keep their job. So they had to get a 2. And so for Jerry to beat Oprah, that's huge. And it was almost huge. There's this feeling of like, it's almost like they started doing all of this just to kind of see, we can do it. People are just as trashy as you think. Like there's sort of that kid who was an outcast and they just felt like they had to prove something to people and they kept going and going and going until they got to the top of the heap. And then what? Okay, you won.
Yeah. Well, and then I didn't remember this, but in 1998, Jerry had a threesome
Yes.
with some guests from the show, some women from the show who were guests on the show.
Mhm.
And there were pictures and, but no one really seemed to care. Like,
Yeah.
in this day and age, maybe people would care. Maybe not. I don't know. I think if you're a beloved figure, you can get away with a lot. And we've seen that. Even if you're not beloved, if you're rich and famous, you can get away with a lot.
Well,
but
if you're a white man,
true,
you can get away with a lot.
Well,
With money.
Bill Cosby got away.
Oh, that's true. I'm sorry. I shouldn't. Bill Cosby.
But, so it has more to do with the money and the
yes,
fame, and not the color of your skin.
But the other thing too is that he. And I also think he wasn't married. He, we know very little about Jerry's life, but I guess he had been married,
he was
very separated, close with his ex, had a daughter who had disabilities. Not quite sure the extent of it, and so I do wonder if that's. Maybe it didn't get a lot of traction. It's like, well, he's single.
Right. He's not cheating on
anybody. Like, the guy has the right to do what he wants to do. I mean, it's not great to use guests, but okay.
Well, and someone said that Richard, the old Jerry wouldn't have done something like that, but Richard corrupted him, kind of started rubbing off on him, and I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Well, then this is towards the end. So Toby, the producer, tells a story of he's at his desk. It's 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, and he picks up the call, and this guy named Mark calls, and he says, "I left my wife and 2 daughters for a Shetland pony." Oh dear God! Yeah, that
was one of their biggest episodes, and it was actually banned in some places.
Yeah, that's how they helped to beat Oprah.
Yeah, bestiality.
Yes. But this was the best. Jerry asks the guy, he's like, "Wait, you don't consider this bestiality?" Because apparently the two of them, this guy and Mark and the Shetland pony, locked eyes, and there was an instant connection. So it's not bestiality because the Shetland pony is consenting. Well, how is the Shetland pony consenting?
I don't know, but that's another thing that Jerry used to do. Like, he was funny. Like, you'd be in the middle of some really serious, crazy thing, and he would deliver a funny line.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of
good timing.
Yeah, broke the tension and made people laugh. And so, I don't know. It just all kind of worked.
Mm-hmm.
Crazy formula.
Yeah. So they just, once they beat Oprah, they felt like, and Oprah apparently publicly criticized the show, though I don't think anything that she said was that bad. I think she just said, I don't want to watch it. I don't watch it. I don't know why people are watching it. I don't get it. That's all she said, was like, I don't get it. I don't know why people are watching it. I don't think it's good, but whatever. So, but that's what Toby said, that like Richard just decided he needed to teach Oprah a lesson, and we got to turn the knob up to 11 now. And that's then the next story is the Shetland pony.
Richard, God, he's so weird. He's insane, and he's part of this documentary. He's obviously proud of this legacy and the show. And
and he's also a little bit of a liar too, as we learn, because Toby straight up says, I don't know, we all went to Jamaica, unheard of. And basically Richard's like, oh, that had nothing to do with the subpoenas. Kind of like, oh, no. It was like, no, it did, Richard. Come on.
Yeah. Well, and Richard, he quit the show before it kept going. It kept going for another 10 years.
Yeah, after he left.
And that's when it kind of died down a little bit. But I can't believe it. I cannot believe that show was on for 27 years.
Yeah.
That is just unreal. And that it obviously, they had enough viewers to keep it on the air. So maybe it wasn't like the heyday, but, so, and it's also so weird that when you think about how things have changed, I mean, this show and the other kind of similar shows did pave the way, like we said, for some of the behavior you see now on TV. But now every single talk show is so milquetoast. It's like, the Jennifer Hudson show, the Kelly Clarkson, like Ellen was like, it was so, the pendulum just swung so far the other way.
Yeah.
Where,
But I just feel like that's the thing about entertainment is people are just not they're not as creative as I think people think. You know, I saw it too, right? Friends came when I was in LA in the late 90s. Everyone was trying to find a show like Friends. Everyone wanted to, you know, people kept trying to do Seinfeld over and over again. Like, you know, when the horror shows, when horror movies came back and Buffy the Vampire, like everybody now had to do some kind of, you know, that kind of show. It's a little bit like that. And that's what happened, right? There were all of these talk shows, one after the other, and they all just kind of followed each other around. And so, you know, and so it almost feels like the same thing where now the formula is the person who hosts the show has to have a huge following. You have to be a celebrity. You have to be Drew Barrymore or Kelly Clarkson. And Kelly is out there too. Kelly's out there singing each episode too. I was like, oh, they're really working her. She's talking, she's singing, she's demonstrating things. So that's the other part. That's the problem now is now it all rests on the star power of the person that they get to interview. And now we have celebrities interviewing other celebrities.
Yeah.
You know, that's what it is now. I've never been a big daytime talk person. I always liked Oprah and I liked Phil Donahue. And I, you know, would watch The View depending on who was there. But really, other than that, I don't think there's been any other shows that I've been that captivated by.
No. Oh, remember Sally Jesse Raphael?
Oh yeah. I don't watch her.
She wasn't as bad but yeah, she was, you know, she was kind of in the middle of the road. You know, you had the extreme ones and then you had ones that were a little more tame, but it was definitely the shock value, like all through the 90s and into the 2000s. And now, like you said, it's celebrities interviewing celebrities, which is so incredibly boring. I don't even know who watches these shows, you know, I mean, seriously, yet they must.
No, they do
go on forever and they pay them a bunch of money and
they do. Yeah. And so, you know, I don't know. I mean, I do think it's kind of interesting how they ended the documentary. I think the documentary was very well done. And it was interesting where they talk about the end, where they talk about there are now, because of Springer and some of these other shows, no boundaries, no guardrails. And so then we see scenes from Real Housewives and then Kardashians. And did they show anything else? Oh, and The Apprentice with Trump. And just about how, right, like, you know, the boundaries, you know, kept getting pushed and pushed and pushed. But the other thing, I was chatting about this with Steve, is he said, yeah, and this was also before the year of, this was, you know, before the internet was the internet, and it was before YouTube. And so that's the other part of it too, is it's in many ways that kind of shock and awe that it left this stage, and it's moved to
the internet.
I think moved to the internet and to various reality shows that have like taken a bit of the formula and moved it over in a way. So I don't know.
Yeah, one thing I've noticed, like, okay, talking about the Housewives, I think everything sort of goes through this metamorphosis. Like, the Housewives actually started out truly being about this group of housewives that all lived in, you know, this gated community. And as it has evolved, when you think about it, to be on the Housewives now, you either have to have some connection to crime, you know, scandal. I mean, like, look at the, you can't be just a boring housewife. Like, think of the people who get the most attention, like Erica Jane and Jen Shaw and, you know, Teresa. Teresa went to prison.
Yeah.
Teresa Judice went to prison and then came back on the show. You know, she never, you know, now it's almost like you have to have something like that. And then there is more violence. You know, it started out with Tamra throwing, you know, a glass of wine and
we saw that
Keogh's face. And I know that there's been on Potomac, I know there's been at least 2 or 3 like physical fights, you know, hair pulling, you know, kind of girl fights. And I'm trying to think of, I think, wasn't there a fight or something on Salt Lake, or I don't know. I just know that that's starting to escalate, you know, with that. And I don't know. The fighting, the meanness.
Well, yeah. I mean, Housewives became about, it morphed. It became about, fighting. Because, in the beginning, it was about this group of women that are in Orange County that all live in this community. And as they moved from place to place to, show to show to show, it was versions of that. But that was the general idea. I mean, New York very much started off with like, these are the stories of our lives and all of that. Mm-hmm. But it's come down to, I don't know. I don't know if it's so much the fighting anymore. I think that, it's almost like what's unfortunate now is the people who have the most attention and the most focus on them usually are the people that are going through the most horrible thing of their life. Unfortunately, it's usually when, like, Erika Jayne's a good example of that, or Dorit on, I've been watching Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. And if you are not watching the show, I have to say, Dorit is on fire and I'm loving it. I'm here for this. I'm here for 2025, Dorit. But that's the thing. Unfortunately, like, she's the star of this, everyone's focused on her because she's going through this divorce. It's like, it's almost like you have to have tragedy. You have to have real awful things. So
it's more entertaining.
Yeah. To have to watch you kind of, figure that out. And they always talked about how so much of this was about escapism. That's what Richard Dominic says. That's when he was writing the tabloid headlines about Elvis and UFOs and all of that, where it was like, your life is hard. So then you're escaping to, these tabloids to think about something else. But it's escapism. I mean, absolutely. But I don't know. I don't know if there is ever, are we just going to keep pushing and pushing and pushing the line, or I don't know. I'm tired of it. I mean, that's why I don't watch Housewives anymore. Mm-hmm. It's, I don't know. I don't know what I want to watch anymore. Well, come with me and watch the thousands of Dick Wolf shows that guy produces. Oh my God. We have Paramount and I started watching the show FBI. I'm like, oh, there's FBI International. There's FBI. I'm like, oh, look at all these shows. But it is, I have to tell you, they are entertaining. They do keep me there. So, anyhow.
Who are there, like, big names on these shows?
No.
Oh.
Well, I think that some of them are. You get to see some actors from the 90s. You get to see some childhood actors that are like, they're on this show now. And, oh God. And, some young new people, but they're formula. The shows are formula. There's a formula that they follow every episode. And I enjoy them because, there was an article that came out that apparently, and I'm one of these people, I have two different kinds of sets of shows that I watch. There are shows where I have to put my phone down and focus. And then there's shows where I can have my phone and or clean, do dishes, can miss words. That's what I enjoy about the Dick Wolf shows. Subsections of things. Like I can rewind a little bit, but like, oh, okay, that's fine. I still know what's going on. And apparently there was an article that was read that apparently that producers are being told to dumb down their shows because they know that this is what people are doing.
Because people are multitasking.
Because people are so addicted to their phones. They're so addicted to their phones. And I'm addicted to I'm just as bad, where they dual wielding. That's what Max and Steve always called it. It's like you're on your iPad watching a show and you're on your phone, like scrolling, texting, doing stuff. And then, maybe you put it down and then you're back on there. And that they're going to start, I hope this isn't where we're going. It was just an article, but that the talk of dumbing things down to make it easier for all these people that are dual wielding.
We're
to make
doomed.
it. And that to me is the scariest thing, because I think the thing is this, there is a world for Jerry Springer, but we also need the Oprah and the Phil Donahue and all of that. We need balances with these things. I don't think there's anything wrong with this Jerry Springer show to a certain extent, but there has to be a balance for it. And that's what bugs me. It's like, please don't dumb down every show. Like, let us decide how much we can pay
Yeah.
attention and not pay attention. I can tell you how dumb something is or not based on me. You know, it's like, still make great art, please, because we need that.
God, don't stop. Yeah, I mean,
and that's a compliment. If you say no, you could need to put down your phone. Like, you need to focus. Like,
that's a
that
good
means
show.
that's a good show, and that's a show that you got to follow and pay attention to.
Well, I wonder what inspired this documentary. This is made by a British guy. I can't remember his name, but like, why now? Like, why make this documentary about the Jerry Springer show now? Like,
Well,
what is he? What it is it?
I think part of it is Jerry's gone. I do wonder if maybe it made it easier for them to do it because Jerry Springer is gone.
Because people are willing to talk more.
Maybe because he's gone
openly
now. And so these people were more willing to talk openly about it. I think some of it is, there is a time frame, right? The show ended 2018. So, you know, there's usually like this waiting, cooling off period where people have a bit more perspective and willingness to talk about things. I mean, I do think that might be the timing of things, of what we've watched with this election. We have a new administration coming in. Maybe they wanted to make a comment on those kinds of things.
Yeah, the outrageousness of what you can do and say now without consequence.
Yes.
You know, you can basically commit a crime of violence on a TV show and have no repercussions for it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, no one's going to arrest you. No, nothing's going to happen to you. You can say crazy things. Nothing's going to happen to you. I mean, like that scene with the Kardashians, that always makes me cringe. You know, there's these sisters physically fighting with you, beating each other up.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like, my God.
Yeah,
So,
I'd wait for the cameras to leave.
Yeah.
Before I hit you, whack you.
They're so image conscious that, why did they do that on camera? Maybe they wanted to. Maybe that's the point. You know, whenever you look at the Kardashians, you're always kind of like, now, are they doing this on purpose, or do they just can't help themselves? Like, what is happening?
I don't know.
And it's produced or not.
But I do also wonder, right, if you think about the Kardashians, what season that was where they got into that physical fight. That was between Kim and Kourtney, right?
Yeah.
So
it wasn't that long ago. I feel like it was maybe 4 or 5 years ago.
So then you then have to backtrack, because these people, they've been on, they've been famous for a long time. They've had cameras in their faces and in their lives for so long that I do wonder, you're not going to do that season 1, but maybe somewhere around season 17, not so much like we have to keep making things different. Almost like, I am so used to this camera being here because we cover Sister Wives. And I think one of the kids truly was given birth on TV.
Born on the show.
Born on television. And we see this with young Truly saying, I'm supposed to ignore the cameras. Like, the cameras aren't there. Like, this kid has been trained from very early on. So they've all been living like this for a long, long time. Maybe you just get used to it being there. I don't know.
Well, speaking of the Kardashians, I just saw the trailer for the new season. These seasons are coming out fast now.
I think they have to, because it's not interesting anymore. Everyone's like, well, I saw all this on social media.
Right.
What do I care?
There was too much of a lag in the first couple when they rebooted it and did this, that everyone was like, yeah, we know. Yeah, we know. We know you got married, Kourtney.
Yeah.
We saw the pictures. Yeah. So I think they're trying to be more current, and it actually looks really good.
Really? I didn't even finish the last season.
I haven't watched the last couple seasons. I don't think at all, but I'm tempted. So
Tempted. Okay.
Maybe
See, they got you on the hook, Brooke. You're part of
But I'm famous for, seeing a trailer and being like, oh, that looks good, and watching 1 or 2 episodes and then just forgetting about it, which means it wasn't that good. If I have completely forgotten about the show, then I don't care. Whereas if I like it, I'll remember, like in Just Like That, which I think is coming back I think they're either
they're shooting.
They're shooting or almost finished shooting or finished. I don't know. But like that, I'm like, okay, it's whatever day it is, that it comes out. I'm like, oh, I got to watch it. So anyway.
All right. Well, that was Jerry Springer. This is a good documentary. Highly recommend. Fights, camera, action. So thank you so much for tuning in. If you are still here with us, that means you must really like us. So if you do, then please go check out our Patreon. We have a Patreon over on patreon.com/PsychLegalPopPodcast. We do a weekly bonus episode where we talk about a lot of these sort of topics. We also do a monthly true crime and a Ask Us Anything for our $8 tier. So go check us out. If you like the show, please give us a 5-star rating and review. Those always really do help us. Subscribe to the show so you always have it there in your feed. And follow us on TikTok for now and Instagram at PsychLegalPop. And I think that's it. Yeah. Tell a friend, share the word, share the news. And thanks so much, everybody.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
This message comes from Jackson. Taxes aren't something you can only think about once a year. With investments, planning for tax day is year-round. Fortunately, Jackson offers tax-efficient products. Visit jackson.com for more information on how our products can make your tax bill a little bit less painful. Jackson is short for Jackson Financial Incorporated, Jackson National Life Insurance Company, Lansing, Michigan, and Jackson National Life Insurance Company of New York, Purchase, New York.
Howdy, howdy, ho, and welcome to Fantasy Fan Fellas. I'm Hayden, producer of the Fantasy Fangirls podcast and your resident lover of all things Sanderson.
And I'm Steven, your bookish internet goofball, but you can call me the Smash Daddy.
And we are currently deep diving Brandon Sanderson's fantasy epic, Mistborn. But here's the catch. Steven here has not read Mistborn before.
That's right, hey. So each week, you'll get my unfiltered, raw reactions to every single chapter.
And along the way, we'll do character deep dives, magic explainers, and Steven will even try to guess what's next. Spoiler alert, he'll be wrong.
Newsflash, I'm never wrong. Episodes come out every Wednesday, and you can find Fantasy Fan Fellas wherever you get your podcasts.
That new thing? Yeah, we've got it. The Drop by GNC, bringing you all the newness that matters, handpicked by the pros who actually know what's up and what's proven to work. We keep you on top of the trends and dialed into what's next. Whether you're crushing it at the gym, leveling up your game, or thriving every day, The Drop by GNC is where the latest solutions in health and wellness land first. Non-stop innovation and fresh finds daily. Explore what's new and what's next on The Drop by GNC.